On tonight's edition of Street Stories,
this was the worst massacre of American servicemen in World War II.
They opened up on us and started shooting.
it was a shocking war crime,
We're talking about wanton murder.
and the man some believe was behind it
He's got away with it so far, scot-free.
isn't even hiding.
Just not right.
He had a small idea
Do you have any idea how big intermittent weight is?
worth big money,
125 million a month.
but he says the automakers took him for a ride.
Chrysler walked away with $354 million profit by taking someone's patent.
So now, this David is taking on Goliath.
The Honorable Abraham Collins presiding.
This was Gregory Scarpa then.
Law enforcement have identified him over the years as a top lieutenant in the Columbo crime family.
But now,
Authorities have a theory that Gregory Scarpa got AIDS, and he used AIDS as a license to kill.
what happens when a man has nothing to fear
There isn't anything that I will hide from or back up from.
and nothing to lose?
We can be mothers. This is a secret recipe. We can be wives. I don't know if we can be a cowboy.
They're city slickers,
Those doggies going up there, Dad.
trying a different field.
Oh, my God, they're turning towards me.
But this trip may also leave a mark
Stop them.
on the men back home.
Now.
Good evening and welcome to Street Stories. I'm Ed Bradley. Yesterday was Veterans Day, a time to honor those who went to war. But our first report is about some who didn't make it back. They were victims of one of the worst atrocities of World War II, a case that has stunned and outraged two generations on two continents. After nearly 50 years, the case is still open. At the center of it is one man, a general who some say has gotten away with murder. And as Bob McEwen tells us, what's shocking is that the man many believe was behind a massacre isn't even hiding.
Strolling through his village in Germany, Wilhelm Mohnke appears to be just an old man, a pensioner out for a walk. In Marietta, Pennsylvania, another pensioner can't forget a walk he took a long time ago.
Just like a bunch of cattle, we went down in this field, and we were all standing there with our hands up.
When Jim Matera surrendered to the Germans outside the Belgian town of Malmedy, he thought he was a prisoner of war.
The last I heard this colonel say was, "Machen alles kaputt." That means to shoot everybody. They opened up on us and started shooting.
The murders that took place at Malmedy represent the worst massacre of US troops on the western battlefields of Europe during World War II.
Author-investigator Ian Sayre is on a crusade to avenge the Malmedy massacre.
Is that a chapter of U.S. military history that has been closed now?
No, it's not closed, and it's not closed because the perpetrator of that and a number of other massacres remains at large, living comfortably in Western Germany.
And that man is who?
Wilhelm Mohnke.
Today, Wilhelm Mohnke is a free man with a reported $40,000 a year pension from the German government in return for his service during the war. 48 years ago, Mohnke was the commander of one of the most feared SS units in the Nazi army, the Leibstandarte Adolf Hitler.
Wherever Wilhelm Mohnke went, there was a trail of death and destruction, not in the normal sense. The death and destruction applied purely and simply to unarmed prisoners of war.
December 1944, the last desperate German offensive of World War II. now known as the Battle of the Bulge.
It was here, just outside the Belgian town of Malmedy, on the second day of the Battle of the Bulge, that Jim Matera's unit, a lightly armed American convoy, was coming along this road when it was surprised by the spearhead of the German army, a Panzer tank column.
The tanks belonged to the division commanded by Wilhelm Mohnke.
See, they were SS troops. They were SS.
What does that mean to you?
SS means bad son of bitches. They were bad. Anything they were told they done. You understand it?
Killing prisoners among
Killing prisoners.
When the Americans came to the realization they were no match for the German tanks, what did they do?
Well, they surrendered, and they were all collected together in this field where we're standing now.
There was no doubt that
No.
you had surrendered. You'd given
We
up.
had surrendered, yep.
The machine guns in the two tanks then opened up on all the men in this field, and there was mayhem and bloodshed.
Well, once the shooting started, all I could hear was the machine gun, for about 3/4 of an hour.
And many of them had their hands up in the air. Many of them died in that position, you know, with their hands up. I mean, it was just a
How
terrible...
many men?
How many men? 72 men died here in this very field.
I didn't have a father to answer all of the questions that a young girl has. And,
Joanne Goldsmith grew up thinking her father, Max Schwitzgold, was killed in battle. In fact, he was killed in cold blood.
I would have to say my father was murdered during the Second World War.
How did you find out about his death?
We didn't know for a long time, because I continued to write to him, and I remember crying a lot when the letter came back.
Deceased, it says.
Mm-hmm. It says deceased.
Incredibly, amid the carnage at Malmedy, a lucky few were able to play dead and survive.
And then one man got up and shouted out, "Let's go."
And I was the first guy to get up and run and hollered, "Let's go, you guys." 3 or 4 on this side and a bunch on this side, they all jumped up, and I seen them running. And the Germans looked out over and they seen us running. They hollered, "Halt, Americans will die, halten, halten, halten." I said, "Halt your ass, I'm going."
The survivors escaped with their lives, and the story.
And the role of Wilhelm Mohnke in what happened here was what?
He was the man that ordered that this particular battle should be fought with total brutality, without any inhibition.
Mohnke received his orders directly from Adolf Hitler himself. Declassified documents show that only 5 days before the Malmedy massacre, Hitler met with Mohnke and other top commanders, ordering them to fight the Battle of the Bulge, quote, without humane inhibitions, and, quote, with special brutality. They knew what he meant.
When the massacre took place over in Malmedy, where was Wilhelm Mohnke?
And he was in the hills around here, moving along on the roads and keeping in touch with his forward units.
Mohnke was not physically present at the massacre. He didn't have to be. He'd already given his order to his right-hand man in the field, Colonel Joachim Piper.
Is there any doubt in your mind that Piper would take that to mean kill prisoners?
There's no doubt in my mind at all. An SS colonel would never have carried out those atrocities without having been ordered to do so by his senior commander, which was Wilhelm Mohnke.
In Malmedy Prozess in Dachau.
5 months after Malmedy, World War II ended, and the time came to settle accounts. The men responsible for the massacre were rounded up and put on trial. U.S. military law was clear. It wasn't just the soldiers who'd pulled the triggers.
This is the man that fired the first 2 pistol shots into the American prisoner of war.
Everyone in the chain of command alleged to have passed on the illegal order was tried for and convicted of murder.
Sentences you to death by hanging.
Everyone, that is, except Wilhelm Mohnke.
What happened was this. 4 months after the murders at Malmedy, General Mohnke was personally chosen by Adolf Hitler to come here to Berlin to take command of Hitler's bunker in the final days of the Nazi regime. It was here, on April the 30th, 1945, that Mohnke told Hitler the Russian army was about to capture the city. Within a week, Hitler had killed himself. The war was over, and Wilhelm Mohnke had disappeared.
The Americans didn't know that when Berlin fell, Mohnke had been captured by the Russians, along with other German officers. 10 years later, without ever standing trial, he was returned to Germany. The German POWs received a hero's welcome.
If Mohnke had not been here at the bunker when the war ended in 1945 and had been rounded up with the other members of his unit, do you have any doubt that he would have been charged and tried and convicted alongside them?
Absolutely no doubt whatsoever. None at all.
Instead, Mohnke settled near Hamburg and became a prosperous businessman. His past might have remained buried, if not for Ian Sayre.
I have provided affidavits. I have provided eyewitness testimony. The most comprehensive evidence ever provided outside a court of law in respect of one alleged, if you like, war criminal, and he isn't being taken, he isn't being interrogated, he isn't being interviewed. I can't believe it.
Wilhelm Mohnke is still on the United Nations list of war criminals. But because his alleged crimes were committed on foreign soil and military law has long since expired, the United States no longer has the power to try him. Ian Sayre says that Germany just doesn't have the will.
I think that the safest place on earth for a wanted war criminal is right here, in Germany.
Hartwig Negendank is the German prosecutor assigned to the Mohnke case.
Up to now, I must say that Mr. Mohnke is not on the verge of being brought to court.
He says he just can't find enough evidence.
I haven't found anything talking or giving me an indication that he could be guilty.
How many of the Germans who were tried for the murders in Malmedy are still alive, to your knowledge?
I don't know.
Have you gone looking for them?
No.
Have you interrogated Mr. Mohnke himself?
No.
In any other murder case, could you imagine going 4 or 5 years without speaking to the suspect if he's available?
Well, I can't only imagine I did.
That the prosecutor has not even interrogated Wilhelm Mohnke is a bit surprising. He's not been hard to find. For the past 2 decades, he's lived in this little village of Barsbüttel outside Hamburg, just 20 miles down the road from the prosecutor's office. Mrs. Mohnke, hi, my name is Bob McEwen. I'm with CBS Television in New York, and would very much like to speak to your husband.
No, that's impossible. I'm so sorry. That is very, very ill.
You say he's not well.
No, he's not well.
You know, there are those who might say that there are a lot of men who didn't get to live past 1944 because of him.
No, it's impossible. I can't help you. I'm sorry.
When interviewed 5 years ago, Mohnke denied everything. He said the war was history and the past should be forgotten, a sentiment shared by his prosecutor.
I wonder, for instance, Mohnke was at those times 29, 1940. If he appears in court in my office today, he'll be 80, 81, I'm not sure, 80 I think. Isn't that another man probably?
But Mr. Negendank, this is the man.
Yes.
What do you say to those people who would argue that the war was a long time ago, that whatever happened, Mohnke is an old man now, and it's best just to let such things be forgotten?
Just suppose that one of the people that Mohnke was responsible for killing was your father, your brother, your grandfather. Would you really not want to see justice take place? And what is justice? I think that justice to the survivors and for the memory of the victims is accountability.
We missed a lot of life, Dad, but we've tried to do the best we could. It's not right that this man has lived free and had a good life. It's just not right. Not when my father didn't have the opportunity to do that. And it's really not fair.
Wilhelm Mohnke is also wanted for murder in Canada, which has accused him of killing dozens of unarmed prisoners of war during the invasion of Normandy. He's also believed to be responsible for the biggest massacre of British POWs. That was in northern France in 1940. Still ahead, you'll meet a man whose invention should have made him rich, but now has nearly wiped him out. And we'll see what happens when some housewives head for the hills.
Yeah, I got manure all over my shirt.
I know, but it matches the manure on your hat, so you're okay.
Do I have manure on my hat?
If necessity is the mother of invention, the mother of Bob Kearns' invention was a few drops of rain. That led to this diagram, a creation that changed the way many of us drive. It's also made a fortune, but not apparently for Bob Kearns. As Richard Rolfe found out, those few drops of rain led to a flood of problems. And in the end, it may have been Bob Kearns who got soaked.
Sometimes a better idea is so small it's hardly noticed.
I believe that when I work on this, that it is talking to me. And my job is to pay attention.
Bob Kearns' contribution to the March of Progress was like that. He saw beyond off and on and slow and fast and gave the world a windshield wiper that's intermittent.
So your invention, when it's just misty outside, right, that's when I really am depending on Bob Kearns for keeping my windshield clear, right?
Well, yes, that's most of it. But if you have two speeds like this one, a high speed, that's my patent too. I got you coming and going. And every car in the world does it that particular way.
He imagined the world would beat a path to his door, a $50 device that no automaker could do without. And Kearns owned the patents.
Do you have any idea how big intermittent wipe is? There's 30 million cars made in a year around the world, times $50, that's 1,500 million. It's 125 million a month that is the market for intermittent wipe.
But Kearns didn't get a penny for his invention, even though almost every car on the road today uses it. Instead, he says, the auto industry just ran him over.
All right.
So now he's in court, where he's been for the past 14 years. He's already won $10.2 million from Ford, but over $1 million of that went almost immediately to the IRS.
1.2 million went to taxes.
Right.
A lot went to attorneys.
8 million.
8 million went to attorneys.
So far.
So that settlement didn't make you rich.
Oh, not at all. I mean, when the judge said in the Ford case, Bob, you know, you won. And the truth is, I lost. I lost the only thing that the government ever granted me, which was the time to be able to start a business.
A patent gives an inventor the exclusive right to make and sell his invention and to keep anyone else from using it. But patents are valid for just 17 years. Bob Kearns' case against the automakers has been so complicated and so drawn out that by the time he won his first victory in court, his patents had all expired.
I brought it to Ford and Chrysler, and that was in October of '63. And I was 36 years old. And the following June, I got my PhD. So you could think of me as young, stars in your eyes, new PhD in your back pocket, and you're ready to tackle the world. You're ready to go for the American dream.
And what happened to the stars and the dream?
They're still there. It's harder, much harder, but it's still there.
The car companies told him his invention was too expensive. Then they soon started putting it on their cars. Kearns didn't find out till almost 10 years later, when he took apart a wiper control device and thought he was looking at his own invention.
Golly, there it was, just staring in the face. It was a severe blow. I felt that they're basically telling me I'm a nothing. I don't even count, that they can just do what they want.
On the eve of his latest court fight against Chrysler, Kearns' family is celebrating a grandson's birthday. The woman behind the grease paint and nose is Kearns' ex-wife, Phyllis. Their marriage was one of the first casualties of his legal battles.
He likes a good fight, but I couldn't handle it when the lawyers would call and there would be screaming and yelling on the telephone.
I think after she left home, I chased her for a couple of years, trying to get her to come home again. But even before she left, she decided that she didn't want to have anything to do with the case. So I said, okay, I'll stop talking about it. But you can't stop the kitchen phone from ringing.
He turned to his children, to Dennis, the oldest. Eventually, almost all of them would be drawn into their father's legal struggle.
How many people do you have who are here working on the case?
Well, it's mostly the family. We've got my brother, Tim, and his girlfriend, Fran. We've got my sister, Maureen, and her boyfriend, Paul. You know, we've got a handful of people.
I've wondered if there's a risk in that for the children or for the sons and daughters, if there's a danger.
I worry about that constantly because I worry that they're forsaking their lives while he's looking for his.
You know, maybe a memorandum of a meeting.
And now, Kearns' stubborn quest has brought him to a turning point.
You want to stay very realistic about the enormity of the task you cut out for yourself.
It is huge.
It is huge.
Chrysler's already been found guilty of patent infringement, but lawyers represented Kearns in that trial. This time in court, he has to convince a jury the car maker took his ideas on purpose, and he has to do it on his own. Kearns' lawyers have all quit or been fired in disputes over fees. So now, he's acting as his own attorney.
All right, I'll call Professor Mizell.
He's hired 2 consultants to help him do it, trial lawyer Dan Henry and law professor Pat Keenan.
There's no way that Bob Kearns can get to be an effective trial lawyer that fast. He's a highly intelligent, well-informed, engaging individual, and he has a strong, I might almost say, admirable, brilliant feel for what the Constitution means. Now, that's not a whole lot of weapons to go in against these lawyers of the competence and expertise that Chrysler has, but it's not bad. It's better than nothing.
The United States District Court for the Eastern District of Michigan is now in session. The Honorable Abraham Cohen presiding.
Still, for a non-lawyer, warns the judge, a trial like this is a precarious journey.
What is offered to Chrysler infringes or not.
No, but you're asking his current knowledge of these circuits and their relationship to the claims is irrelevant.
Oh, no, sir, it's not. I wouldn't be doing this.
Well, I got to tell you something, Dr. Kearns. It's between my thinking it's irrelevant and you thinking it's not. I win.
Well, that's true. I understand it. But
I win.
As for the meeting on July...
Chrysler's attorneys need to convince the jury that even if the company did something wrong, it didn't do it deliberately.
A single one of them says any patent Dr. Kearns surfaced, was discussed, or was passed out. Nothing. Not anything. There isn't any evidence of deliberate copying.
Yet on the stand, Kearns has retired Chrysler patent lawyer Jess Santo read a memo he wrote shortly before the automaker began using intermittent wipers. Before the wipers go on any cars, the memo warned, the company had better set aside money for lawsuits by inventors such as Bob Kearns.
Page 7, Mr. Santo.
I recommended that such a reserve be continued if the intermittent wipe proposal were approved until we accumulated approximately $500,000.
And there's more. Testimony that Chrysler engineers knew about Kearns' invention and knew about the warning 19 days before they produced a wiper design infringing on Kearns' patent.
Did you ever talk with Mr. Santo about what is contained in the memo?
Well, I'm not sure.
Keep your voice up, sir, please.
Yes. I'm not sure what part you're referring to. I probably talked to him about some of the electronic circuit proposals.
Kearns believes it's the key to his case, but the judge reminds the jury there's testimony that at the time, Chrysler had doubts Kearns' patents were valid.
The existence of an honest doubt concerning the validity of a patent precludes a finding of willfulness.
The trial has run 6 weeks.
I know you all paid very close attention to the evidence, to the testimony, and the exhibits that came in during the trial. I thank you for that. Do what's fair.
And when the jury returns with a verdict, Kearns looks as if he's already heard it.
You find that Dr. Kearns proved by clear and convincing evidence that Chrysler acted willfully when it infringed any of Dr. Kearns' patents? Answer, no. Section 2, reasonable royalty.
Though the jury decides Chrysler's infringement wasn't deliberate, it says the company still owes Kearns a lot of money in royalties for using his invention.
What amount do you find is a reasonable royalty on a per-unit basis for the total of 12,564,107 units Answer, 90 cents per unit. Is that your verdict?
Yes, it is.
That means more than $11 million for Bob Kearns, but it's money he may never collect. Chrysler is appealing, and so is Kearns. Chrysler says the judgment's too big. He says it's far too small.
By our calculations, that means that Chrysler, the infringer, walked away with, what would it be, $354 million profit by unlawful conduct of taking someone's patents. How are you going to go home and tell your children that unlawful conduct does not pay? It's not true.
So now there's an appeal, and there will be more trials. But so far, no court of law has given Kearns what he really wants, and perhaps none ever will. That's the time he lost long ago to turn his invention into a business all his own, a dream he had to turn his better idea into a legacy.
Despite being a faithful and loyal son, haven't you ever been tempted to say, Dad, they're right, take the money and run?
Nope.
And it's been costly to you. It's been costly to all of you.
That's why you don't take the money.
Because of love?
No, because it hasn't cost money. It's cost life.
The cost for Bob Kearns may continue to climb. Last month, a judge made rulings which may force him to hire an attorney instead of representing himself. His next opponent in court will be General Motors. When we come back, a man in the middle of a gangland war faces a killer he hadn't counted on.
This is the hand that was dealt to me. I'll play the hand.
More street stories in a moment.
Authorities say Gregory Scarpa made his reputation as a member of a powerful crime family living in the shadow of death and violence. But he met his match when he confronted one killer that didn't carry a gun. What followed was a death sentence. But as Harold Dow tells us, this one wasn't a deterrent to crime. Some are calling it instead a license to kill.
For the last year and a half, there has been a bloody gangland war being fought on the streets of Brooklyn, New York. So far, at least 13 members of the Columbo crime family have been murdered. Another 16 barely escaped with their lives. Law enforcement authorities say the violence began as a power play to replace former Columbo boss Carmine the Snake Persico, who is now serving 100 years in prison.
From, I guess, November the 18th until basically early January, there was this shooting war.
Charles Hynes is Brooklyn's district attorney.
I mean, I have no problem letting these folks blow each other away. I think it's good for us ultimately. The problem is, you know, most of them don't get annual firing practice, you know, so when they start shooting at each other, they begin to miss, and they end up killing innocent people.
Hynes says that when an innocent victim was gunned down last November in what he called a mob-controlled bagel shop, something had to be done.
What we did was, on my orders, we served grand jury subpoenas on 41 Columbo associates, capos, and soldiers. It stopped the war because when they're under subpoena, they can't shoot. They all hide, you know. They watch too many, I think, Class C movies.
But authorities say there is one man they couldn't stop, a man considered the most feared of Carmine Persico's allies, a man who police say is probably responsible for escalating the Columbo War. His name is Gregory Scarpa, seen here in a 1986 police surveillance tape.
Law enforcement sources have identified him over the years as a capo regime, a top lieutenant in the Columbo crime family.
Police sources claim Scarpa not only directed some of the mob killings, but committed at least 2 of the murders himself.
Ordinarily, it'd be very unusual for a capo to shoot. I mean, he would have any number of people that he could direct hits.
To carry out a shooting?
Yes, sure.
But it's unusual for a capo
to
do that.
Yeah.
And the reason police say this capo began to shoot is even more unusual. For this is what Gregory Scarpa looks like today. His body ravaged by AIDS. His doctors have given him only months to live.
This is the hand that was dealt to me. I'll play the hand. If I could outbluff the opponent, which is death, fine. If I can't, I lose the hand.
Last summer, Scarpa showed up in a courtroom in Brooklyn, New York, just long enough to receive a cash settlement from the hospital he says gave him an AIDS-infected blood transfusion during an operation for a bleeding ulcer.
I think it was about like 5 or 6 donations that were used. One of them was HIV infected. His blood wasn't tested, and I received that blood.
When we chat a little bit, we'll talk about maybe some of the feelings you have now and what changes you may have gone through.
It's rare for an accused mobster to sit down for an interview, but on this day, Gregory Scarpa wanted to send a message to his friends and to his enemies that he would not surrender to AIDS.
I will show them the courage that I've displayed all this time, the bravado. I will show them that, hey, this is still me. There isn't anything on earth that I will hide from or back up from. And I certainly won't do it with this either.
Police say Scarpa had been true to his word. A few days after our conversation, he was arrested and charged with 2 murders and the conspiracy to commit 2 more, all within the last year.
Authorities have speculated that because Gregory Scarpa has AIDS, that he used AIDS as a license to kill.
From what I know, that's very, very true. He was dying. He wanted to settle scores himself. Nothing for him to lose.
This man, a high-level member of the Columbo crime family, agreed to speak to Street Stories on the condition that we conceal his identity and change his voice.
And even though he has AIDS and admits himself that he's close to death, you still fear him? Even now?
Until he's in the ground, and maybe afterwards, too.
Really?
Sure. Oh, yeah. They're no candy store gangsters, I'll tell you that much.
According to Justice Department documents, an informant named Joseph Ambrosino says Scarpa personally committed at least 2 murders. One, the shooting of a mobster named Larry Lampisi, and the other, the shotgun murder of Nick Granzio, to whom Scarpa allegedly said before firing, "This one's from Carmine." A few weeks after his arrest, Scarpa's attorney was able to get him transferred from prison to a nearby hospital and then released on bail.
The allegations that were laid out by the informant are total and complete allegations. They're totally and completely false. This fella, Joseph Ambrosini, is a person that I wouldn't even allow myself to talk to.
Who is Ambrosino?
He worked for Scarpa. Whatever Scarpa told him to do, he would do. They were very close.
If he was there, let them charge him with the murders, not me, because I wasn't.
Authorities have a theory that Gregory Scarpa got AIDS, and he used AIDS as a license to kill.
If I'm to be what they allege me to be, why do I need AIDS to be that way? I could be that way without having AIDS.
Today, Gregory Scarpa is under house arrest and under 24-hour surveillance. He's facing 2 murder charges and a death sentence from AIDS. But Scarpa intends to stay tough until the end.
It's a killer. No question about it. It's a killer, and I accept it. Maybe I'll get lucky and get a heart attack and not die of the AIDS virus. Heart attack, bango. It's all over.
While Gregory Scarpa continues his battle with AIDS, another battle rages. In the last 6 weeks, there have been 6 shootings in what police say is the continuing Columbo crime war. Next on Street Stories, you'll meet some Kansas housewives who answer the question, where's the beef? next report is about some women who decided to get away from it all and what they found when they got there. They're real-life city slickers who usually drive carpools and now are about to drive cattle. They're leaving their husbands at home with the kids. So now these women and their men are about to learn what it takes to handle a wild herd.
We need cowboy boots, gloves. We got cowboy boots. Are we supposed to get around lariats? No lariats.
Okay. I bet we will be almost carbon copy of that movie and Billy Crystal. You know, when he arrived, he knew nothing. I mean, he was so green about everything and didn't know how to do anything. I bet we'll probably be that way.
Yahoo! Now listen, came out here city slickers. You're gonna go home, cowboy.
Medium, to match the boots, to match the glasses, to match the purse. I think it's a little city in the country. I think that's my statement I'm trying to make.
City slickers from Wichita, Kansas. The closest they've ever come to ranch dressing is in the local supermarket.
Okay, now, like, run real fast like you're chasing a cow. Let me see.
It's kind of a tricky part.
Debbie Kuhnauer is a full-time homemaker.
This is a secret recipe. Did I tell you that? Does your desk say...
Becky Way works full-time in real estate, supervising managers of apartment buildings.
Everything you think in your mind.
And life can be pretty hectic.
Gotta get the peanut butter, make 3 sandwiches, each one different because one kid likes a jelly, one kind of kid likes a peanut butter and jelly. The baby just likes to have something because the other boys have something. So we just mass-produce peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, one for each kid to eat in the car before soccer.
We're moving. I think I'll roll everything. Isn't that how the Cowboys did it?
This is going to clash with my boots.
The Stetson.
Jammies? Men's jammies. I don't think silk and Zsa slippers would work at a dude ranch, do you?
Okay, now I need the Band-Aids and the Bend-Aid.
This is going to be such a new deal for us. We can be mothers and we can be wives and taxi drivers and cooks and... I don't know if we can be a cowboy. But we'll find out.
It only took a minute for my finger to find a daily dose of destiny under my sign.
On this weekend, Debbie and Becky are headed for the Homestead Ranch. Only an hour from their home, but for them, a lifetime away.
I feel lucky. I feel lucky, yeah.
Becky and I are the kind of girls that we like adventure and we like to kind of challenge ourselves.
I feel lucky today.
I hope you haven't passed our exit.
Knock, knock. Your city slickers are here.
The thing about the cows is they're going to know something's up.
The homestead belongs to Jane Koger, fourth-generation rancher in Chase County, Kansas.
You'd think that cows wouldn't be really that smart.
On most weekends, she takes in female guests who want to experience life on a working ranch.
Those doggies going up there, Dad. It's a place for women to come to be involved in real non-traditional jobs, to do non-traditional skills, and be successful at it. And we call it the prairie woman look.
Happy
John,
trail.
I think we're saddled up now. Look, we're going to the truck.
Meanwhile, back at the other ranch, 2 husbands face their own new frontier: how to feed 5 kids.
We've got 3 options. We can cook out hamburgers, which is going to be a lot of work.
That's work.
We can call in pizza.
That's easy.
We can go to the high school football game, which is going to be work, but we can get dinner easy.
Yeah.
Hot dogs and nachos.
Now, this alfalfa is dynamite. They love that. It's
The
bright
task
green.
is less complicated for Debbie and Becky. Their first job is simply walking the herd from one spot to another.
Come on, guys. You're losing your cattle. Oh, my God. They're turning towards me. Wait. Wait.
No, click on that one.
This doesn't work.
Is this your first cattle drive?
Somehow, a mile and a half later, it all comes together.
This is progress. You can tell that they believe more in themselves because they've done something they didn't think they can do, and they didn't think they'd ever have an opportunity to do.
Come on, gals.
Yeah. Yes. Look at me. Yee-haw!
Now, if you ask me what's going on in the game, I have no idea. I have no... You get mustard on there?
You want ketchup on that?
I don't think you got any mustard. We need mustard.
We need mustard. This is dinner tonight.
You have dinner, you throw it on the ground. When it's all done, you don't have to clean it up.
No dishes to
Don't
clean,
sweat.
nothing. You want some popcorn?
This is the only way to ranch on the prairie.
Yes, ma'am.
Rustle a few cattle, soak a few bubbles. I bet Kurt is still trying to get Kelly and Molly to bed. He's probably got another hour.
Or everything is going perfectly and they're never going to let us forget it.
Drew, get off them. Now. There you go.
Handling cattle. 2 rules are most important. Move cattle as calmly as possible and make your first attempt at restraint successful whenever possible.
Gotcha, Beth. This one, see, is doing this. Yeah, and then we open it back up, making sure it's clear so we don't hit somebody.
She's been here how many hours and she's like Miss Cattle Woman.
Okay.
She is like explaining
where's
that.
Sean?
Hey, Becky, when was this machine built? Yeah, I got manure all over my shirt.
I know, but it matches the manure on your hat, so you're okay.
Do I have manure on my hat?
2 of these shots is given in the muscle, and usually in the hip's a good place for that.
I don't know if I could do the shot.
You don't want to hurt him. I know that's going through everybody's mind. Does anybody want to do this?
I'll do it. Oh. Is this the one that goes in the muscle?
Yeah, just like right about
Lord
here.
have mercy. Do I stick it hard?
Go on. It does. Come on, do it. It's okay. Okay, squeeze it. Okay, pull it out. Good job. That's how you do it. Great.
Yikes. I'm sorry.
Success has a way of breeding confidence out here.
Oh, okay, bring on those cows.
Confidence slips into bravado. It doesn't last long.
Does anybody want to do the brand this time?
Not in this lifetime, Jane.
Yeah.
Is this hot?
Well, not with gloves.
Okay.
Is it hot yet?
Yeah, it gets a little bit, but it's not bad. Oh, I'm really nervous.
Good job. We'll be doing this again in 2 weeks.
That's right. I have to make a preschool run that day.
Hey, Kelly, where does Mom keep the paper plates? I don't know if we have any paper plates because I don't know where we keep them when we have them. They just always show up on the countertop.
I bet Kurt does his famous lemon pork chops. It's his favorite thing to cook. I bet that's what he does.
Okay, thanks a lot. Have a good evening.
Pizza!
Let's go.
Oh, boy. Okay, Kelly.
Drew, Corey, let's go eat.
Here's to prairie women in a job very well done.
The first time I gave the shot was the coolest thing. The first time I stopped a cow with that bar.
Besides breeding confidence, Jane wants to instill something else in her city slickers, a love of the land.
From that one pasture to the other last night, I thought, that is the coolest thing.
It's also special enough that I think if I had a choice between heaven and Kansas, I'd pick Kansas.
Oh, my gosh.
Oh.
There was a calf born early Sunday morning,
Man.
the same day Debbie celebrates her 34th birthday.
Debbie does the Dude Ranch. Is that the greatest? Thanks, buddy.
And then a homecoming to beat all homecoming.
Here now, Brandy, Debbie.
Happy birthday, Mom. We baked this cake just for you.
My kids really haven't experienced this part of the country before, and I think they'd love it. I think they'd love to run and to find rocks and pick flowers and look at cows, and I think everybody needs to do something like this. It's wonderful.
Debbie and Becky say they'll hit the trail again in the spring. They want to be back at the ranch when the cows give birth. We'll be right back. That's Street Stories for tonight. Next week, we'll bring you a follow-up report on a danger that could be facing millions of us. Not long ago, we told you about how some seatbelts might not protect you during serious accidents. That story brought sharp denials from the auto industry. But it also brought new evidence from government and industry files, evidence that may surprise you. That story and more next week. Until then, thanks for joining us. I'm Ed Bradley. We'll see you Sunday on 60 Minutes. Good night.
Sunday, she begged the courts to protect her from her husband. It happens to thousands of women every day. Based on a true story, Knots Landing's Michelle Lee stars with James Farentino and Cicely Tyson in the world premiere movie When No One Would Listen, Sunday. Now get ready for Knots Landing, next. Street Stories, a production of CBS News. For a transcript of Street Stories, send $5 to Box 7, Livingston, New Jersey, 07039. And for VHS cassettes of tonight's stories, call 1-800-348-4480.
Experience